Hello, my name is Daniel Schoonmaker. I'm the Executive Director of West Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our presentation today. For those that are not familiar with our organization, the Forum is a collaboration of business institutions dedicated to promoting sustainable business practices with a focus on climate leadership, social justice, circular economy, and community resilience. This is the 9th in our series of online discussions on how the coronavirus pandemic is impacting sustainability and sustainable business. Upcoming programs include next week's presentation, Advancing Social Justice, Social Equity and Sustainability in Michigan, a webinar highlighting efforts in Southwest Michigan, specifically St. Joseph at Benton Harbor, which will feature Lynn Todman, Spectrum Health Spectrum Health Lakeland and City of St. Joseph, Laura Goose of the City of St. Joseph, and Mary Jo Schnell of Out Center of Southwest Michigan. Video of today's program and the prior sessions are available on demand at no cost. You'll find a link to those in the chat shortly, and you may like to bookmark. You'll also receive a link to those with a feedback survey and any additional notes that come out of today's program. This series and all of our programs are primarily funded through membership donations. If you are not yet a member of our organization, I encourage you to become one. There has never been a better time to do so or a greater need. To that effect, I'd like to recognize our latest corporate member, RJZ Consulting, LLC, a small company that assists industrial facilities with environmental and recycling related projects. You may also be interested in learning about our various working groups, including our new Prosperous Economy Working Group, which launched with 2 meetings yesterday and the day before, and we'll be meeting meeting virtually throughout the month of May. Our Sustainable Lakeshore Task Force, which meets next tomorrow, and our Climate Leadership Roundtable, which meets next this Friday. If you're interested in those, please reach out to myself or Rose Spickler after today's meeting. Now I'd like to introduce the panelists for our program today. Leveraging low occupancy for improved efficiency, performance, and a better, safer startup. Please welcome Mike Troupos, Managing Director of Foresight Management, Kevin Van Dyke, Director of Engineering and Virtual Design, Feyen Zylstra, and Sherri Jett, Director of Utilities, Michigan State University. And Mike, you're going to kick us off today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and you like to share yours and introduce yourself at your convenience.
Yeah, you bet. Dan, can you hear me all right? And can you guys all see my screen?
It looks great.
Awesome. Well, before I jump in, I will say Rose commented on the books behind me and how nicely organized they are by color. I'd love to think that I'm that OCD, but it was actually a colleague who set them up. But yeah, I like looking at them, so it looks nice for a background. Well, like Dan said, I'll be talking a little bit about how you can optimize facility operations today as maybe facilities are idle, as well as start to think about the future and how you can best operate your facility as you get running again. So quick outline, I'll tell you a little bit about Foresight Management and how we help companies. And then we'll focus on 2 and 3, which will talk about areas where you can reduce costs and operate your facility better as it's vacant. And then 4 and 5 will be around startup and some best practices, as well as some ways to maybe keep people healthier and safe. So let's jump in. Foresight Management, you can think of us as outsourced energy and sustainability managers. Basically, what we're helping people do is come up with an energy management plan. And what all that entails is helping people on the supply side to understand and have visibility into their utilities. I always say you can't manage what you don't measure. So we want to help people understand where energy and costs are flowing within their organization. We also help people reduce energy consumption in their building. So we'll go in and help them implement projects, design projects, test feasibility around new technologies. And then we've been helping people with sustainability as well. So that's kind of the breadth of our purview as an organization. My background is in engineering. I've been at Foresight for 8 years, and I'm an all-around just energy nerd. So I'm excited to nerd out with you guys here on some of these different items. And speaking of nerding out, this slide right here is actually based on a video I released on LinkedIn. The day after the shutdown was announced, I put a video out that basically said, when the shutdown happened, I was frantically running around our office trying to figure out how I could reduce energy as much as possible. And so that's what this slide goes over. The biggest area I think that you can save in a shutdown is on your HVAC system. So just make sure that your thermostats are set back, and make sure that you're, again, setting the facility to unoccupied when you're not there. There's no reason to run heating or air conditioning when no one is in the space or the facility. You can do that on a regular thermostat. You can do that on a programmable thermostat. If you have a building management system, which a number of our clients are maybe school districts, that's really nice because you can go into your building management system and basically shut down the whole district. And that's what a number of them did, resulting in significant energy and cost savings. Kind of along the same lines, this lighting piece, some organizations like school districts again, or larger office buildings have their lighting on a control system. It's a good idea to make sure that those are set to unoccupied as people are not in the space. The other thing I want to talk about is appliances. So this one is mostly for break rooms. We see this in not only industrial facilities with break rooms that can get a lot of traffic when lunchtime happens, but even just in offices. You'll find, 5 or 6 refrigerators in a break room to fit everyone's lunches in it. Well, if no one's coming in, you don't need all 5 or 6 of those refrigerators plugged in. You could probably take all the condiments out of each of them and just consolidate them into one refrigerator, leave it plugged in, and unplug the other 5. Same thing with microwaves. I was looking around our office. We have a couple of other point of use printers. Just unplug those. And again, this is good advice all around. Just don't leave more appliances plugged in than you need. And then the final thing is actually a great example of this is a business we met at the Sustainable Business Forum. I'm not going to say their name, but we met them maybe six or so years ago, and we did an energy audit at their facility about this time of year. And when I was looking in their mechanical room, I saw that their snow melt system was still on. The sensor must have been broken at some point, and so they just defaulted to leaving it on. Make sure, I know it's niche, but if you have a snow melt system at your facility, go make sure it's turned off. This is the time to turn it off, not in September after it's been heating your concrete even more than the sun has all summer long. So those are some ideas to help you reduce energy consumption. Beyond energy consumption, I also want to talk a little bit about waste. And this is something that, again, is valuable during this time, but really is valuable long-term in taking a more active management approach around your waste invoices. And so before I tell a little story around the case study at the bottom, I just want to talk about how waste is generally billed. There's 2 common ways. The first is scheduled pickup. You basically call up your waste hauler and say, I want you to come and pick up my trash every Tuesday. So they come and pick up your trash every Tuesday. And it's really easy. You don't have to do any management. You just sign the contract and they're coming out every Tuesday and picking it up. The downside of that is your bin could be 10% full or 100% full. They're still coming out to dump it. And if it's 10% full, there's obviously not a whole lot of sustainability involved in having a big dump truck come out and empty a bin that's hardly full. So a more robust approach is, and the second way that you can negotiate your contract with your waste hauler is doing what's called an on-call setup, which basically means you call the waste hauler when your bin is full and they'll come out and pick it up then. The big pro on that is it's a lot less expensive. You do need to have someone within your organization that can champion that basically owns calling your waste hauler when the bin is getting full to come pick it up. But I would argue that the active management is worth the savings that you can get. And I'll give you that in this case study. So there is a company we worked with here in West Michigan. They have one site. They spend $100,000 a year on waste. So they have quite a bit of waste that they're hauling away. And one of their biggest waste streams is a wood dumpster that they have come picked up. And they were having it picked up weekly. And when we were going back and looking through the records, we found that on average, the bin was only 30% full. And so this was not a really good setup. And when we ran the numbers and said, if you just call them when the bin's basically full, you'd be able to save $13,000 annually or 13% off of your overall waste hauling costs. And so that they ended up doing that, and they found the guy who, there's really only one guy who was putting wood waste into the bin. So we got him trained up and he was the one who made the phone call. The other thing to note is even if you don't want to go do this, another easy low-hanging fruit thing we'd recommended to them is say you don't have someone that can own it, even if you move it from weekly to bi-weekly, your savings wouldn't be 13,000, it'd be about half, like 6,000, but you'd still be able to save money doing it more intelligently. So again, I want to challenge you and encourage you to take a look at those waste invoices. This is a great time to cut costs. So see what you can do around reducing waste and better managing it. Okay, let's jump into some startup best practices. And before I jump into startup best practices, I want to say that this section right here is really going to be focused on industrials, especially industrials here in West Michigan that are maybe on Consumers or Indiana Michigan Power. Both of those utilities have what are called demand-based rates. So generally speaking, at your house, your electric bill is just for consumption, which is your kilowatt hour. So how much energy did you consume over the month? Well, in industrials, they also have another facet that they'll bill you on, which is demand. And demand is how much energy did you consume in a 15-minute interval throughout the month. And the highest one of those, they'll bill you on that. And the reason why they bill you on that demand is because they have to build out enough infrastructure to get to service your demand at that peak. And so they'll bill you on that in many cases for the month, but even in some cases, like one consumer's rate, which is general primary demand, they'll actually bill you on your high demand for the last 12 months. So you're paying on that for the next 12 months if you set a new max demand. So let's jump into the case study on this one. We had a client who is in the industrial world, and they had 3 very large electric ovens. A few years ago, we had a really bad windstorm blow in, and it knocked out power to their site for over 36 hours. So what happened is their 3 ovens all dropped in temperature back down to basically ambient. Well, when power was restored to the building, they said, we're just going to fire up all these ovens so we can get back and running. Well, what had happened is in the past, they'd really only ran generally 2 ovens at a time. So their utility bill came in, and we were helping them track it. Their utility bill came in, and we said to them, hey, your demand is significantly higher, resulting in significantly more cost. What's going on? And they said, oh yeah, we had a power outage and we fired on all the ovens at once, and we hadn't really thought about it. And so we help them understand you want to make sure that you're staggering those kind of things on startup. Otherwise, you're going to set that high watermark. And the unfortunate news was they had a $15,000 in extra charge for the peak demand they set for that month. But then they had another little under $1,000 per month they had to pay for the peak demand for the year that they were paying on across that entire year. So again, if you have an industrial facility, take your time starting it back up. You don't want to fire all your equipment up at the same time. Maybe do things like pressurize your air system and activate it the day before you're running. And then when you're usually starting at 7, maybe start some lines up at 6 and extend the startup from 6 through 8 or 9 in the morning. Anytime you can spread out that demand will really help on the electric costs and those demand charges. And again, the big caveat on this is just make sure you know what rate you're on and if demand charges are a factor when it comes to turning on your facility. Another thing around startup, and this is, so the last example was heavily geared towards industrials. This one is more geared towards, I would say, commercial and retail, where our customers who are in like hotels, our customers who are in maybe retirement facilities, places like that are very interested in some of this. And that is making sure that your HVAC systems are set up to keep people as healthy as possible in the space now that we live in this world with a virus. And so the low-hanging fruit things are just keep your filters clean, or maybe invest in the next level up from a robust standpoint in filters, and even going all the way up to like a HEPA air filter that you could put into your furnaces and your rooftop units. However, there's one technology that I think is actually really cool. So I'm actually a civil engineer by education. In my senior design project in college, we helped design a UV disinfection system for a wastewater treatment plant. And this technology is actually quite robust in the wastewater treatment world. The city of Grand Rapids uses a UV system to disinfect their wastewater before it's sent into the Grand River. So again, this is proven technology, but it's basically the same idea. You put a UV light in your air handler or your furnace or your rooftop unit, and that UV light kills viruses, bacteria, germs, odors, and what it does is it basically improves the air quality of your facility. So if you're a retail organization, it could be a good story to tell, saying, hey, we've invested in UV filtration for all of our air. And so when you come visit our establishment, we're making sure that we're keeping our employees and our patrons as healthy as possible. And the other thing to note is most HVAC systems, unless you're in maybe a hospital application, are recirculating air. That's just how HVAC systems are set up. You'd use significantly more energy if you were always pulling fresh air. And again, hospitals, because of the pathogens and things that they deal with, have to pull fresh air. But most, again, retail, residential, any application like that, you're finding a large percentage of your air is being recirculated. So having a way to clean it can be extremely effective. Okay, so those are the different ideas that I have for you guys when it comes to thinking more strategically and critically about operating your facilities in light of COVID. I want to finish with this. It's a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle Is the Way. And I just want to encourage you. I know this isn't how many of us wanted 2020 to go. And I understand that there's a lot of uncertainty, but I would challenge you and encourage you guys to reframe this whole situation and realize that many times the times that we are most challenged are also the times that we can grow the most. So I just want to encourage everyone. I know this is not a great situation, but think about how each of us in our organizations can get better and do better so that as we make it through this, we'll all come out strong. All right, that is all I have for you.
Well, that was great, Mike. I didn't like, how would you classify that UV technology as affordable?
Yeah, so ballpark is, I want to say like 150 per ton installed. So if you think about that, if you have maybe 10 tons worth of heating and cooling in a smaller office space, you're looking at $1,500. So really not wildly unaffordable. There is some maintenance with it, so you'll have to change that UV light every couple of years, but otherwise it doesn't really consume all that much energy. And it's a great way to, again, just make sure that you're keeping your employees and your workers healthy, as well as anyone who's coming in to visit.
That's I learned quite a bit, quite a bit there, and I see some people have already found the Q&A function. If you'd like to submit questions via either the QA or chat, all of our speakers will be available to answer those live during the presentations, and we'll have a joint question and answer period after all three have had opportunity to speak.
Sure.
Now I'm going to we're going to hand it over to Kevin Van Dyke, the Director of Engineering and Virtual Design for Feyen Zylstra, who will speak to us about how we can take advantage of this time during low or reduced occupancy. Kevin, would you like to share your screen?
Sounds good. Can you see it okay?
I can, yes, sir.
Perfect. All right. So thanks for guys coming to the presentations today too. So we're Feyen Zylstra. We're an electrical contractor. So it really is going to complement kind of from a contractor standpoint, just some best practices and things that we run into on a day-to-day basis that we can kind of help you from a sharing and learning experience, things we come across, and just give you a perspective on how we see things at the same time too, so we can all learn through this time. So I'll give you some real quick gratuitous marketing slides here for those who are familiar. So Feyen Zylstra is an electrical contractor. We are headquartered here in Grand Rapids. We serve the Michigan area as well as have branches outside in Tennessee and South Carolina as well. And most of as electrical contractor, you can expect pretty much, I like to sum this up with anything that touches a wire and with technology is something that we touch. So I am the Director of Engineering and Virtual Design here at Feyen Zylstra. I've got a collective 13 years experience there leading the engineering and a lot of working with a lot of the technology as well. But less about me, and more about kind of the content about what we want to talk about today is just that what are you looking at from a low occupancy standpoint. So really want to start by wondering what questions are we asking ourselves right now? There's a lot of the obvious out there with COVID, but there's no question that the workplace right now is going to look different for many of us. And it depends on what kind of business you're in. This forum really represents a variety of businesses from all over the markets. And so they're all asking different questions. So if you think about an office right now, you're thinking about what seating arrangements are going to change. How are we going to get people back into this office? And if you're a manufacturing facility, you're also going to say what work styles are going to change. People are working close together. And then really for everybody, we're asking what schedules are going to change. Is everybody working at the same time? Is there a 9 to 5 anymore? What does that look like? Even the obvious with restaurants in Michigan here, there's just all these questions are swirling around there. So as you're going to start to bring your teams on board, you're going to have to quickly react to the answers of those questions. And so you have the opportunity right now during some of the lower reduced occupancy. So there's some things we can do on the front end too that are going to prepare you and keep your team members safe as you're starting to bring those people online. So that's really what we want to accomplish today. So lower reduced occupancy. I say low and reduced because low is right now for a lot of you right now, and then reduced may be in the future. So when people start going back to work, that actually may be more reduced than it is back to normal there. So how can you take advantage of this time? I know that sounds like a weird question right now, but there's really a good prime opportunity right now to put a bunch of effort into some special projects that you could put into. Mike talked a lot about those in his presentation, so that was a really good, lended itself to kind of flow into us really well. And so I really want to just leverage this from a contractor's point of view and give you a few kind of anecdotes that kind of help you support the position of how we can take better advantage of this time right now. So from a contractor's point of view, we always think now is the best time. And so one of the biggest challenges that contractors have to do in their work is really whether it's occupied or not, right? So one of our basic examples right there are kind of two examples right there of different occupancy there. So on the one picture on the left, a lot of people working, and this is also environment, obviously. And then the picture on the right is completely empty. Mine's the one person stayed late. But at the same time, the example I like to give is what are we going to need to do in this environment? Even using Mike's example, if there was filter changes that are going to happen in this, how do we get up into the ceiling space? And those people working at those computers, how are we going to be able to safely keep them safe during this time? And how kind of noisy are we going to be? Are we going to disrupt them quite a bit? And so when I say now is the best time, as far as the quickness and the speed and the disruption to the business, that's it's going to be the best time when there's lower reduced occupancy. We can get in there quick and do the work that we need to do. So when people are at their desks, a lot of times you can't work above them. When machine cells are hard at work, when you're trying to ramp back up for production, the last thing you want to do is a contractor stopping that production so they can do some work around them. And then even from things I'll talk about a little bit later is electrical systems are up and running. And you don't want to interrupt manufacturing output and shut anybody down. When people are working at their desk, you can't say, I have to shut your panel down, which powers your computer for a period of time while I do work on it. So that's why one of the points is just it's the best time right now to get in there. It's the least disruptive for your business. Another reason is really shift premiums. A lot of times what we have is people are really asking the question, hey, we don't mind, we want you to do this work, but can you come back when we're not here? That generally, if you think about, that's really like a mid-second shift on if you work on the standard. If people come in at 7 o'clock and leave at 5 or 6 o'clock, we're really coming in around the 7 o'clock period. So you incur a lot of shift premiums with contractor standpoint, but when we have to come back to that. And so a lot of times you can reduce some of that when we're working during the normal hours while you're at reduced occupancy. And then really project completion before the business starts back up. One of the main points here is when you're starting to ramp things back up, your focus should be on your work. It's going to be on your product. It's going to be on the people that are coming back to work right now. What we don't want you to have to do is you really worry about all those projects that you should have done when it was a little bit slower. So I'm going to give you some of vulnerable personal experience of mine, but think about the honeydew list that I have at home, right? So my biggest failing sometimes is not doing that during the week when it's a little bit less busy, but trying to smash that in on the weekend when maybe we have company coming over for the weekend too. So I kind of use that example a little bit tongue in cheek, but at the same time, it's slow right now. Let's get that honey-do list done. When people are coming back, your focus shouldn't be on that. It should be on the people and the product that you guys offer, whether that's a service industry or if that's a manufacturing industry where you actually physically supply a product. Which kind of leads us into really this special projects list. What kind of special projects should we be considered right now? So you've really already understood that it's a good time to tackle that project list right now. What projects are really going to lend themselves to lower occupancy than others? I won't go into too much of this because I know Mike touched a lot about this, but I kind of just bucket this into efficiency upgrades. So there's the standard LED upgrades, lighting schedule changes. I even mentioned fire alarm modifications at that point too. We have a lot of schools as customers, and a lot of times the codes are changing a lot with fire alarm, and usually the summer is our 3-month window to get in making all the changes that we need. And so really we want to just leverage the fact that schools are out and they have been out a little bit earlier. So now you've kind of gone into almost now it's not a 3 month, but now it's a 4, almost even 5 month window there where we can get these projects done. So best time now is to jump in there and get those done. Lighting schedules, Mike mentioned that as well. A lot of times you don't necessarily know kind of while you're off site, you don't think about it, but central control systems right now are turning lights on and off at different times. Even when you come back, there are certain pockets of the building that are not going to fall underneath that traditional schedule as it was before. So really making sure you kind of go back in there and make sure you're tweaking that. The next category I really wanted to say is more preventative maintenance. It's a lot of times low on people's list, but it really should be higher on people's list as they go through there. So one example I like to get is infrared scanning. And so on the picture on the far left there gives you an example of an infrared scan of a fuse system. Really the hot spots really showing that a potential failure point there. And one of the things that we want to talk to about that is as you're going to kind of ramp up and you're going to look at different projects and your manufacturing is going to ramp up, what we don't want to do is have a facility failure cause you to reduce output. You're already behind. A lot of us are behind because of the shutdowns, and we're going to try to ramp back up. So the last thing we want to do is have to worry about that facility portion of it. And this is an easy time right now. I'm going to use this is going to be the case with arc flash studies, but also that thermal imaging is we have to do that while the power is on and the panels are open. But to open the panels, a lot of times we have to shut the power down to get inside of those. And so I talked a little bit earlier about the disruption to workflow if you have to shut equipment down and shut power down in facilities. In arc flash studies is the same point. We got to be tuned into the safety of your employees at the same time too. So this is always like on everyone's special projects list, and it always gets moved to the bottom, right? Because it's almost like the least priority. Because most people, from their standpoint, would say, do we increase production or do this safety study? But it should be higher on this list. And this is a good one to just knock off the list while the facilities are low and reduced occupied. From a standpoint too, you do have to shut some panels down a lot of times to inspect conductors and really understand that. So we want to take advantage of this opportunity while we're not going to disrupt anybody. And then really the last one is, it's kind of because of the situation that we're in right now, how did everybody leave the facility? I kind of have an example of a chain guard there too, just to kind of jog my memory. But when everyone left and everyone had to go home in your facility, did everyone just leave? It felt a little disruptive at the time. Things were changing a lot. People's heads weren't in the right space. There was a little bit of fear out there too. So how did everybody leave? Did they just drop their tools and walk away? And so I think it's a good example to just come in and just evaluate the facility from a startup standpoint the day before and just really realize, are the chain guards all back on the machines? Is everything put back away? Are panels shut? From a safety standpoint, is everything back in order, allowing people to come back and start working on things? I know the construction industry spent a lot of time during the shutdown, when they were abruptly shut down, making sure projects were safe and job sites were safe. But at the same time, a lot of equipment was put away. And so you almost need a little bit of a ramp up time to get back to it. And then the last category really is just infrastructure upgrades. There's a few things that are going to happen because of COVID, and there's going to be new equipment that's going to be needed. And each one of those pieces of equipment is probably going to need new infrastructure requirements, whether that be new tools, whether that's going to be new manufacturing processes, or if that's just physically distancing existing systems and or office furniture that you have right now. So I think it's easy to say we're just going to space people out. And that's an easy thing to say, but if I use the soffit example right here on this picture, what if I said, okay, now we're going to take those desks by the window, we're going to push them up against the window. Easy to say, but when that person has to connect their Ethernet cable and plug their power back in, is there power at that facility? Can their cords reach over there where they used to reach? And I think there's going to be some infrastructure upgrades that are going to be necessary. You might put equipment in places that you didn't necessarily have before, because it's going to be a little bit longer term. You can't change the four walls of your building currently right now in a short time, but you can slide a machine over into a different corner than it was before. But the question is there a network drop? Is there an air drop? Is there compressed air? Is there power in that spot right there? And so all these new tools, whether they be thermometers, scanners, all these things going to need infrastructure requirements. So just getting tuned into what those requirements are and thinking about those on the front end before people come back. Because once people come back and they're saying, my machine doesn't, you push it over here, but my machine doesn't start up. That's going to be a little bit more reactionary at that point. So it's best to take the proactive measure right now and really understand what those requirements are going to be. And really the last thing that is always worth keeping in mind, and I think it's going to be critical in the light of this rapidly changing environment, is you're going to have this laundry list of projects now, hopefully after this webinar, from all the good ideas that you're going to hear today. And we just want to make sure that as people return to work after these special projects, that we're really taking into account your worker safety at that point. So the first category really is kind of mentioned, just like my last slide there, was new equipment. So when you bring that new equipment over, so take the example of the machine I pushed in the corner there, and you plug it into the wall. What are you going to do once you plug that into the wall? What are you looking at from that standpoint? That really just thinking about new electrical loads. So what panel is connected to that? If you start spacing machines out and you start bringing connections all around, you really got to be mindful about the electrical load that you're going to start putting on different areas of the building that you didn't have before. And that's going to be really key to making sure that you guys don't shut down production. So if you inadvertently overload a panel there, you're really going to make sure that you're not going to interrupt an operation that normally wasn't going to be worried about. And you don't want to interrupt any more operation than you have to at this point. So I give the example too about a plug strip at your house. If you think about the fixed plug that is in the wall, has 2 plugs in it. By adding a plug strip to it, you've increased it to 6 right there. Really the fixed load at that wall, the capability of that plug on the wall is the same whether you put 6 devices or 2 devices on there. But when you put 6 devices on there, there's a lot more power coming out of that. And so we got to be mindful of that. You take heating examples, ovens, you just want to make sure that large load facilities like that is taken into account. And how is it connected? Temporary or permanent connections? You might be in a fit of a hurry. You might push that machine in the corner and throw an extension cord on the floor. And you want quick get it plugged into the wall. But just a little bit more mindful of, is this a temporary fix? Is this just trying to get us down to the next executive order? Are we just trying to figure out what's happening? Or is this going to be kind of a permanent arrangement? And really understanding what the infrastructure requirements are for that. And when it comes to worker safety, how are your workers going to interact with that once they come back? And so I've talked to somebody about this a little bit ago. When we all come back to work, it's not going to be like coming in from a long holiday weekend. It's really going to be a lot different. People are going to be connecting with each other. If you think about your employees who haven't seen each other in 1 or 2 months. And so there's going to be like an awareness that people are going to need. And so by draping a lot of cords across the floor, we want to make sure that their focus is really on the work, and that's a barrier that they're going to have to worry about. Are they going to have to step over that? Are they going to have to duck under that? We don't want to make anything any more of a hazard for them than it is than it normally is. And new utilization. What by that I mean, are you going to push machines in areas that weren't before, like I've mentioned? But at the same time, where is your utilized space? Are you going to start pushing stuff into maybe high-low traffic areas or walkways? I found that people have old habits and behaviors, and it could put people at risk if they weren't expecting equipment to be there. I have this habit of walking into our shop, and our walk path is always to the left. So if I came in one day and someone had put a piece of equipment there, I almost would turn left and kind of run into that new piece of equipment. And so we don't want that to happen, and we want to make sure that the worker safety is really keeping in mind there on any of these infrastructure upgrades that you do put in place. And then as it comes to personal protective equipment, I think the obvious answer there is the mask. What kind of equipment do you have on staff, on hand when you bring back? I know probably a lot of you, that's the obvious, the mask, have thought this through already. But at the same time, we want to talk to more about, maintenance staff, facility staff. The face shield there is kind of an example of an arc flash face shield. As you start making connections to new equipment in different areas of the building, there's a arc flash and a fault level hazard that increases as you get closer and closer to the utility. And so if you've made different connections to equipment, how has that impacted your safety equipment? Do you have the proper safety equipment on hand to be able to manage that? Because we want to make sure that all of our employees are still taken care of with the right PPE as we start coming back online, and making sure that's been made aware of. And really, just kind of as we're wrapping up on this, it doesn't really matter at what end of the spectrum you are, if you have an empty building or you're going to anticipate some reduced occupancy as you ramp back up. But there's really easy things that you can do during this time, and just making sure that there's intentional thought on the front end. It doesn't have to be very time consuming, but can really increase the impact of your business and also minimize worker safety risk when you guys get back.
All right, thank you so much, Kevin. Really appreciate that. And if anyone has questions, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, or the top of your screen, or the chat function. Now I'd like to welcome Sherri Jett, the Director's Utilities for Michigan State University, to learn what some of the data that the university has collected since the outbreak and the shutdown that has happened due to COVID-19. Sherri, I can see your screen, and you just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go.
All right.
So you can see my screen. That's a good start. All right. So I'm Sherri Jett. I'm the Director of Utilities at Michigan State University. I'm part of the Infrastructure Planning and Facilities Department. Michigan State University main campus in East Lansing is basically a small city. We have 5,300 acres, over 560 buildings, over 100 of which are dedicated to academic instruction. Typically, our student population is around 50,000, but we also have 13,000 academic and support staff, administration staff, supporting the operation of our city. We teach, we do research, community outreach, and of course, a very large portion of us, including my team, supports the critical infrastructure for our city. And that includes, we generate our own power and steam for use on campus, as well as water. We produce and distribute drinking water on campus. So really, I wanted to focus in on how we at the university responded to the COVID-19 pandemic coming through. And I'm going to focus on these areas: online classes and working remotely, community support, the reduce in energy and water demand on campus, and then preparing for the future. Starting out with community support.
Yeah, hey Sherri, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind going to presentation format? I think everyone will be able to see the screen a little better.
Oh, I thought I did already. Thank you.
There you go. Appreciate it.
All right, so starting with community support. We are a research university. One of the things we had to do very quickly is to go through our research activities on campus and prioritize which research needed to continue to happen through the executive order and which could be shut down and resume at a later date. Same thing with other activities and facilities across campus. And because there is and was critical research going on to support the community in this very difficult time, including providing community health services. These are some examples. We set up and provided drive-through COVID-19 testing. We have fogging disinfection facilities, which we worked with the FDA and got expedited approval on to be able to disinfect medical equipment, including N95 masks, gowns, and so forth for the healthcare facilities. We've research in faster COVID-19 testing, ventilator prototypes, and making medical face shields to support the healthcare industry. Not only that, we as a campus came together, community came together to identify and donate to the medical care. For example, some of our research that we were able to shut down, we were able to take N95 masks and other things that we had available and donate them into the regional healthcare system. And then lastly, some of the things we're working on now in local communities and communities across the state. We are taking samples, not only here at MSU, but samples from other communities, and we're analyzing them for COVID-19 in the sewage and helping to track infection and identify peak infection in different communities. So one of the things that seriously impacted our need to provide critical utility service across campus was our move to online classes. This is a little bit of a timeline here. March 11th, the state of emergency was called, and MSU began transitioning to online classes. By March 16th, we started offering our residence hall students incentives to check out early, as that to allow us to start closing down residence halls. By March 20th, we completed the transition to online classes, and as of April 20th, almost 90% of our resident students checked out of the residence halls, and we relocated the remaining students into 2 residence halls, again, to give us the ability to shut down halls and secure buildings. In parallel, we moved to working remotely. We started March 13th, really identifying what those minimum on-campus operations would be and what staffing would be needed to support that, and started transitioning to working from home. By March 16th, we got the official direction to move to minimum operations on campus. From a facility standpoint, what that really meant, it was a very dynamic situation. Since we have so many buildings across campus, over 500 buildings across campus, keeping track of which buildings were still occupied and not, so that we could come in and adjust our services to match that. But our focus during that time period was really moving to reducing our activities, critical infrastructure work, increasing cleaning and disinfection in buildings that continue to be occupied, and providing whatever essential support was needed for the remaining building occupants. March 23rd, as you know, the Stay Home, Stay Safe order came out. by April 13th, we found ourselves in a position of really having to resume, at least in power and water, since we generate our own electricity and steam and drinking water for campus, having to resume code compliance, overhaul, and preventive maintenance work to keep our facilities up and running and reliable for the campus community. And by the following week, we then resumed critical preventative maintenance for utility distribution and building services. So this is a snapshot of the impact this stay home, stay safe order and COVID-19 pandemic has had on our campus utility. This is energy. What you see on the left side of the chart is in red. That's our electrical use on campus before we moved to online classes or started to move to online classes. The green is during that transition to online classes, and then the blue is once the executive stay home, stay safe order came out and there was mass migration to working from home and stopping all but critical activities on campus. And you can see it's about an 18% drop in electric demand on campus. On the steam side, we generate steam for use across campus for building heating and cooling. So during the same time period, we saw about a 10% reduction in steam use. And you'll notice there's quite a bit difference between this reduction in steam use versus the reduction in electric use. And that is because while we transitioned into fewer occupants in the building, unless a building is completely empty and there are no occupants, there's minimum shutdown or turn down to building services like heating and ventilation that we could do. That's why there's a less of an impact on the steam. However, without that many people on campus, the electric use dropped more significantly. Since we generate our own electricity, we use natural gas to do that. This shows that we have a corresponding reduction in our natural gas use during the same time period, about 18% in the same order, same ballpark as our electric consumption reduction. Now let's talk about preparing for the future. We spent the last a couple weeks working on back to work protocol, and at least in infrastructure planning and facilities, providing training to staff. This back to work protocol are things like maintaining social distance, wearing your face covering, no more than one person per vehicle if at all possible, and if there has to be more than one person per vehicle, wear your face covering. Disinfect before and after for common tool use, those kinds of things. We've got that protocol all put together. It's been issued to all of our staff across campus, and we're doing online training for right now. For the campus as a whole, we're working on a phased approach to returning to research, phasing additional research back in, bringing employees back on campus, and opening our buildings. Now, I will say that there's several things out there. If you guys are dealing with buildings or spaces that you have shut down and you're looking at reopening, there's a lot of things to consider. One of those, besides the HVAC recommendations you heard earlier, ASHRAE has actually come out with a recommendation related to COVID-19 response of recommending to also increase airflow if possible, the number of turnover in your building, as well as the HEPA filters if that's possible. On the other side is think about your water in your plumbing systems. If your building and your facility has been out of use, that water has been stagnant or relatively stagnant for that time period, and that's an opportunity for bacteria growth. So you're going to want to flush your building plumbing systems before your staff comes back to work. Eagle has some published drinking water, building flushing guidelines. Those kinds of recommendations are available out there, but don't forget those kinds of activities as well. The other thing we're working on is space reconfiguration to support social distancing. So those are things like break rooms, lunch rooms, meeting rooms, gathering centers, and going in and saying, okay, what if we remove some of the chairs in here and we space out the chairs? That will help people naturally maintain more social distance rather than hoping they remember to keep a chair empty or 2 chairs between them, that kind of thing. The other thing, also going in and adding, say, plexiglass barriers in places that it makes sense to provide separation and between, say, a customer and the service. Now, one of the things, big questions up in the air yet is, what does the fall semester going to bring us? Is it going to be online classes, in-person classes, or some hybrid? Since we don't know yet, since that decision hasn't been made, the pandemic's still rather dynamic. We have to plan for all those scenarios, and that's something of a challenge because our operations are complex across campus. Being able to forecast electricity, steam, natural gas usage, and the cost implication of those with our plans is quite complex. But those are things that we definitely have to consider as we develop those plans, and we're in the process of doing those things now. So when those decisions are made, we're ready and can hit the ground running. And that's my presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Sherri. If you wouldn't mind, stop sharing your screen. That would save me the trouble of having to find the button that would do it on your behalf. And we're going to now open up into questions. So our first one, this is for Mike. In your presentation, you talked about HEPA filters. And we have a question. Most furnaces and rooftops do not have fan power to overcome increased static from HEPA filters. Do you have any recommendations regarding that?
Yeah, so that is a good point. A number of different HVAC pieces of equipment have different fan ratings that basically allow it to push air through the filter. So you are going to want to check with your check on your unit. You can look up the nameplate and do some searching, and basically they'll have in the product sheet help you understand. They'll tell you what the highest filtration capability that the unit can handle. And again, you can pick based on that. So you are correct. Some units aren't going to be able to handle a HEPA filter. You'll want to check before you just put a higher grade filter in your unit.
And another question specific to Mike and a clarification. And I think I asked this a little bit already. Just, do you think UV filtration will become the norm? Also, is it really expensive? And additionally, what UV lighting is needed? UVA, UVB, UVG.
I'll take the last one first. I think the person meant to type in A, B, or C. Those are the 3 types of UV light. You want to focus on getting a lamp with UVC light, and specifically, if you can, 254 nanometers is your best bet. This is actually a fun fact. The reason why UVC is so effective is because our atmosphere blocks 100% of the UVC light from the sun out. UVA and B makes it through, and that's what gives you sunburn. But the UVC is blocked, and so what happened is evolutionarily, germs, viruses, even humans never developed any resistance to UVC, and so that's why it's so effective. A matter of seconds under UVC light will give you a terrible sunburn, and again, will ravage any type of bacteria or viruses. So again, you want UVC light. 254 nanometers is the optimum for killing that. Again, that holds true in air or in water, which is again what I learned about. More on the question of cost. Yeah, again, it depends if it's worth it to you. I would say from a cost, and this probably answers the adoption question as well. I think it's going to vary, and especially where I think the organizations I think that are going to adopt it first are going to be organizations that deal most with at-risk people. I think about like a nursing home. If I own a nursing home, I'm probably going to give this a serious look because I don't want my nursing home to have a bunch of my residents get sick. So again, more at-risk populations or facilities that house those will probably be the first adopters. Again, retail could make sense. I don't necessarily think I don't know. It could become the norm. It all depends on how long COVID stays around and as the research continues to show effectiveness. Again, preliminary research shows that UV light and even just the outdoors is very, it hinders the virus quite a bit and destroys it. And so again, it depends on how it spreads, but I think it's something that beyond just the health benefits for COVID, filtering your air with like a UV system can help on allergens and other things as well. So it's just a general improvement of air quality, but do I think everyone is going to run out and buy these immediately? Probably not, but there are definitely some really strong applications for, again, retirement facilities and even just general retail. If you want to keep your employees healthy, so you talk about a distribution center or a grocery store, like those are great ways to keep your employees and your customers healthy. Did I cover all three of those questions?
I believe so.
Great.
So I think this question is probably it could be covered by anyone on the call today. Are time of use electric rates coming to commercial facilities in the near future?
They actually already are in existence for anyone with consumers energy as their electric utility. They offer both primary and secondary time of use rates. I can actually tell you that a number of our clients have moved to the time of use rates and seen significant savings, some on the order of magnitude of over 6 figures in annual cost reduction. So that is available. And maybe Dan, just in case people don't know exactly what a time of use rate is, basically what that is the utility companies have to spend a different amount of money to generate electricity at different times of the day. So if you think about it at night, your base load power can pretty much cover load, but during the day and especially during the summer when it's really hot, they have to turn on peaker power plants and additional generation assets, which can cost more to run. And so that electricity is more expensive. And so by offering a time of use rate, they give you a lower cost for electricity on nights and on weekends because electricity is cheaper for them to generate. And then they'll charge you more than usual for electricity consumed in the afternoon when most people are demanding electricity. So that's how a time of use works. And yes, consumers has them. Unfortunately, DTE, to my knowledge, has not really set anything like that up for their electric customers on the east side of the state. And Indiana, Michigan Power has a little bit of one. And then a lot of the municipalities are hit and miss.
Great. Any final thoughts from Kevin, Mike, Sherri?
No, I have one taboo. I have a question for Mike, actually. I know it's maybe not allowed normally, but it's to tag on the UV system. Are those good retrofit solutions for those, or is it still a little in its infancy?
Yeah, I think it's still pretty new. We've done some digging. There is one technology that we found that you can retrofit. I'm guessing it's not going to fit perfectly in everyone's in their air handler, but sure. But again, I think there is technology out there that's offering this as a retrofit.
Cool.
All right. Thank you again, Mike. Thank you again, Kevin. Thank you again, Sherri. And thank you to my colleague Rose for doing all the back end logistics of this as well. That is our program today. And again, thank you all for all of the attendees for joining us. If you found our talk valuable, please consider becoming a member of the forum, or check out and please check out our website for upcoming webinars, including our next presentation on Thursday the 21st, talking about advancing social equity, and our one the subsequent week on May 27th, which will unpack what's happening with recycling in Michigan today. So that is our program today. Thanks everyone, and I know I'm going to go and get some projects out of my way today, Kevin, and Mike. I'm going to go find me some UV rights.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Sherri.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.